BTB listeners, thank you so much for checking out today's episode. Listen, if this episode inspires you, do me a favor, take 5 seconds to shoot me a like and subscribe to the podcast. There are several more exciting guests that are in the pipeline, and I just can't thank you enough for your continued support, and let's keep paying the mission forward. In today's episode, I interview Julija Eddy. Julija is a former tennis client I had who came from an orphanage in Latvia with her 2 sisters over 10 years ago. She has a remarkable story of perseverance, making the decision at the age of 9 years old to come to the United States with her sisters, with an adopted family, to pursue a goal and a dream. We talk through the challenges that she had with language barrier, her education, and developing her tennis game, to the unbelievable moments of getting into a private school in Colorado, and also the time that she spent in Arizona before going to Creighton University, where she's studying in her last semester to become a nurse. This story is so inspiring, and there's not too many people that I can think of that truly have such a remarkable journey, and it will impact you as the listener.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you.
Welcome to the BTB Project, designed to empower listeners to identify their why and to live their best lives no matter the circumstances. My name is Coleman Gerhardt, a former athlete and motivational coach. I've had the opportunity to inspire thousands through my story and help accomplish what they are built to be. You'll be encouraged by each and every episode, and let's get into it.
Yeah, when I blow up, I'ma soar high like Peter Pan. In real life, be living out my dreams. If I'm waking up, it's in a foreign land.
You know, it's kind of wild this time of year as we just winded down Thanksgiving at the time that I'm recording this episode. And typically a lot of people eat pumpkin pie, but here I am eating humble pie. I get an opportunity to sit down with a dear friend of mine. She's taught me more about what I can learn in life than maybe I ever taught her about forehands and backhands. It just brings me a tremendous honor to have a conversation today with a young lady I believe has persevered, that has overcome, and she did it with her sisters. And she's now with a beautiful family, thriving as a student and as someone that has a lot of perspective and insight that's going to impact you as a listener. Miss Julija Eddy, welcome to the BTB Project.
Wow, thank you for having me. Oh my gosh. So excited and nervous at the same time.
Hey, you know, I may be just as nervous as you are because your story is so impactful and it's so meaningful and it's such an inspiration. And I don't want to give away too many goose eggs before we get into our conversation, but nonetheless, thank you so much for taking the time. And I just would love, for transparency, you and I met on the tennis courts. At the time that we met, I happened to be a teaching professional in Colorado at a club that your family took you to, and somehow, some way, and I remember this vividly, I was on a very particular schedule and I only could teach during certain hours based off of the hours that they gave me. But based off of your availability, your mom and dad was asking the club, hey, like, this is our availability. We would love for our daughter to find an opportunity to get a lesson. And all of a sudden I get this random text to be on the court with you. And it wasn't something that I set up. It wasn't something that I planned, but somehow, some way, you and I ended up on the court together.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to dive into that, but I would love for you to tell the listeners, what is Julija Eddy up to these days?
Oh gosh. Well, right now I'm a senior in college, go to Creighton University in Omaha, not too far from Colorado, which is funny because did not know that Creighton existed at all until senior year of high school. And funny enough, have so many friends who go here from Regis. Almost finished, majoring in health administration and policy, and then planning on going to accelerated nursing after I graduate to pursue nurse practitioning. Outside of school, just service, fun things, not much tennis as I would like to anymore. But funny thing, I'm dating someone who plays tennis for Creighton, so I still get to watch tennis a lot and keep updated on all the professional side of it too.
All of the ins and outs, right?
Yeah. So it's funny
Yeah.
because I still love it. I've always loved it, so it's just kind of a funny connection there.
I think that it's great that you continue to be able to find ways to tap into that. And it's crazy to me because being a Colorado native, I ended up spending some time in Arizona, which you ended up spending some time in Arizona. And then all of a sudden I'm in college and I'm competing against Creighton. So it's wild to me to have all of these different pieces fall into place to where tennis is a small world. And I know you're not as active in it as you have been in the past, but nonetheless, for you to still be impacted by it, for it to be meaningful for you is really cool. Going back to that moment at Inverness Car Athletic Club, which, believe it or not, no longer exists. About a month and a half ago, it got purchased by a developer that scraped the entire property. So all those tennis courts are gone and they're building condominiums. So I'd love to get your thoughts of knowing
Oh
where
my
you learn how to
God.
play tennis no longer exists.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I mean, it was kind of like home to me a little bit. I loved going there, intimidating at the same time because there's so many other kids playing, and I would see them next to me playing so much better than I was. So it was kind of funny because it was where it all started. I remember going there with my two younger sisters, because all three of us were trying to figure out if we like tennis. And both of them actually were like, nope, we're not into it. And I was the only one who was left on the court. So yeah, oh my gosh, that's so sad.
Yeah, and what's even crazier is your coach here. I started playing tennis when I was 14. You had a 2-year advantage over me, and I at the time lived in Parker, and Inverness was not too far of a drive, and I was able to take my first true tennis lessons at the club as well. So when I knew that the club was no longer going to be there, I'm like, wow, this is kind of
Oh,
crazy. So tying in some Colorado tennis current history, and it makes me reflect on, yes, that moment when I was able to take the court with you. And I remember talking to your mom, who was looking for an opportunity to dive into other coaches that were available at the club. And at this point, I just started working there. I'll never forget meeting your mom, and she told me a little bit about you and your sisters. And I would love for you to tell the listeners about where you're from and how you got to the United States.
well, so I am from Latvia. Both of my sisters were all biological sisters. So all three of us got adopted. I believe it was almost 2014. So we happened to be put in an orphanage. I was 10 years old. So my sisters were 8 and 4 or 5 years old. So we were put in an orphanage, and that was kind of where this whole adoption story started, because Latvia happened to be one of the partners for a international adoption organization. So I got to see a lot of my friends in the orphanage to be hosted by a lot of American families.
Mm.
And so I remember always being kind of hopeful that I get to do that, and it's with my sisters, because living in an orphanage is not something that I wanted my sisters to go through, but also a huge part of me did not want to go through that because I did not want to leave my dad and mom behind, knowing that I would probably never see them again.
Right.
But we happened to be available for hosting. And for that to happen, your parents' rights had to be completely taken away. So that happened, and we became available. And one day we were interviewed for saying, would you like to be hosted by this family? And we had no idea who they were. So they took our picture, put it on a website, and randomly one day I remember saying, you have a host family? And then, yeah, we got put into the program. And the next thing I remember, we were at Denver airport meeting mom and dad, Tracy and John. And yeah, that was kind of the start of the whole adoption process before adopting us. There's a lot of leaving, going back, thinking, am I going to get to see them again? And then hearing again from them. And then a final question being asked, do you want to be adopted with your sisters or not with your sisters? And I remember that being very challenging because part of me did not want to go because I would never see my parents again. But then part of me also knew that I would never see my sisters again if I didn't choose one or another. I did choose to be with my sisters, as hard as it was. And so we were adopted. I started playing tennis shortly after that.
Yeah. And I just, again, remember that conversation with your mom, and it just, the humble pie comment that I mentioned earlier is because your story and that decision you had to make, right, was a decision that, to be honest, a lot of 10-year-olds should never have to make. And you made that decision as a big sister, as a representative of your family. As I uncovered that through getting to know you on the court, my respect for you and that decision, I could not be more proud of you. And it makes me think of some of the situations that I've been in my life. Here I am. We're talking about my son before we hopped on, junior in high school. He's not my biological son. I met him when he was 2.5, and I became dad. I'm very proud to be that in his life. And knowing you and your sisters and the opportunity that you had to come to the United States, and how meaningful it was and how much of an impact it would be for you, is something I don't take lightly. And I know that you appreciate, but it makes me think, as you're developing your tennis games, the reason why you came to me at 12, going through middle school, about to enter high school, you're St. Thomas More kid, which is a great developmental school, Catholic based in the Denver area. And you had this eye of going to Regis Jesuit, which is where I happen to coach high school tennis. So I'd love for you to talk to the listeners about, one, what was it like coming to the United States educationally and the language barrier? And two, knowing once you got here, you had your eyes on going to a school like Regis. What was it like for you to make that transition amongst all of the other transitions you were making at that time?
Well, school-wise, it was very different. Obviously, language barriers, because I spoke no English coming in. So my parents decided to homeschool us the first year we came to the United States, which was the best decision they made for us. So that's where I started to learn how to read and how to, do things in English instead of another language, which was very challenging because my 8th grade year in middle school was my first year in an American school. And I mean, it was just, even though I knew how to speak English, I mean, not as well, still coming in and just seeing everyone around me speaking words that they just always use, but I had no idea what they meant, like.
You're saying, like, when I yelled at you on the court, like you couldn't understand what I was saying? Like,
could understand. And so coming in, I had to always kind of, in the back of my mind, in the back of my head, I was just, what does this even mean? And I did not want to look like I did not understand it. 8th grade, it was obviously before freshman year, so everyone was studying and for this entrance exam. And I mean, in the back of my head, I was just like, there's just no way I can get into Regis. Out of all schools, it's one of the hardest schools. And so there's a lot of fear and a lot of things that my parents had to go through explaining to the dean of Regis, or saying that she will not do as well as other kids because just where she's at. And so I remember going to Regis for the first time and having to take a writing test.
Like an
was-
entry test.
Yes. And so they made some adjustments for me because they knew where I was at, but they still, obviously, I still had to do things. I tried very hard, especially for the first 2 years, to not catch up with other kids, but learn as much as I could, because partially it was a little, maybe just for me personally, it's a little embarrassing not knowing certain things, because kids are kids and middle schoolers are middle schoolers. And so sometimes they'd be like, you don't understand this. And I say, well, no, I don't. But just to be funny. So
Right.
kind of connecting that to tennis, I remember it being very hard to understand where's baseline, what is forehand, and certain things that I knew what it was, but there's just certain aspects of the tennis language that I had to look up extra videos or
You
do
had
the
to
homework
learn
that you're assigned. And
how to
yeah.
communicate it in a way that bridge the gap from what you've seen and what you were
Mhm.
used to communication wise to what you were in environmentally moving forward.
Mhm.
And I think what would be a tremendous perspective at this point is, I know you touched on what it was like being a middle school kid in Colorado after you came here to the United States.
Mhm.
What would be a day in the life as a 9-10-year-old in Latvia compared to the day in the life of being a middle school kid in Colorado?
Very different. So just a typical school day. I mean, at that time, I was still in an orphanage. I was lucky enough to still be able to go to the school that I always went to. And because usually when you got to the orphanage, everyone went to the same school. You didn't really have a choice. But the director made a choice for us to keep us in the same school. So I would wake up very early, probably 6 a.m, and walk to a bus stop where a school bus would come, and get on it around 7 a.m.
How
And
far was that walk, Julia?
from my orphanage, it was not very long. It was probably 10 minutes, but you still had to stand there and wait for it.
How was the
So
weather at that time when you were getting on the bus?
not good in the winter times. It was cold. It was very dark. So there were many times where I would walk and I was scared, and I would get on a bus and be in the bus for about probably an hour, because it made multiple stops until I got to the school, and then went to school for however long those days were, and then go back to catch the bus back to the orphanage around 3, make that same stop for an hour where I was the last one to be dropped off, and then walk back to the orphanage and do homework, or sometimes did not do homework just because there was no one to push me. If I wanted to do good, I would. If I didn't, I didn't. And then eat dinner and just kind of hang out, play whatever games.
Were you getting a lot of full meals back then? Like meals you wanted
Yes,
to eat? That's good.
it's funny because I always thought of an orphanage as like this kind of prison kind of thing.
Right, but I remember you telling me, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was a particular soup you loved.
Oh yes.
Do you remember the soup? I'd love for you to
Yes, it's
tell us what's in that.
I don't know how to directly translate it, but it's a cold beet soup.
Mm.
And I mean, I still love it. And so, yeah, we ate that a lot. But lucky enough, I mean, I know probably when you think of an orphanage, you don't exactly think of this luxurious place or anything. And it's not, by no means, but we were still very well taken care of. We had breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We had clothes. We had, everything that we needed. And in school, because I went to a public school, I got a free lunch. So yeah, so did not have to worry about that.
So you make this transition. I mean, your sisters make the same transition, and you're in a school setting in the United States. You're getting settled. You're working your way through a couple of years, and you're getting close to being a high school student. Was it just a much different experience for you to be a school kid in Colorado than being a school kid in Latvia?
It was very different because, I mean, just that thing of where you don't have to walk to a public bus stop and wait for an hour or whatever to get to school I had my mom take me to school every day in a warm car. It was different because, I mean, obviously I didn't have my close friends by me I knew since I was in kindergarten. So that made a whole difference because it was, again, just meeting new people and being in a new environment. The education is different. It was just getting used to a new grading system. I mean, it was just like, what is an A or what it was. I mean, I just had to compare in my mind because in Europe it's 1 to 10. And a 10 is being A basically, and 1 is being an F, I guess. So it was just kind of things in my mind where I had to get used to, and then your mom picking you up from school again, not having to wait, or if you miss the bus by accident, like, what do you do?
Did you ever miss the bus back in Latvia?
It happened once or twice, I think. So I just had to run to another bus station and catch a bus again. So it was just.
And Julia, just so I understand correctly, you're on and off this bus at 9, 10 years old on your own?
Yeah. Yeah, it was, I mean, I never walked. I mean, there were a few times where I walked by myself to bus stations, but it was always with my sister. So, I mean, still little, but yeah.
I appreciate you so much sharing that. And I think when it comes to how you've talked about some of the transition with the grading system and the language barrier and just the tackling the education, right? And I mean, here you are in college, your senior year, 1 semester left. I'm like your biggest raving fan right now because what's amazing, and I've never told you this, but I actually wanted to go to Regis.
Oh, really?
I was not academically able to get in. I took those writing tests you were talking about. I took all of the entry tests and they were just like not going to happen. And it makes me think about your story because I remember after you go through all of this stuff on the entrance side and we get to that point to where either you're accepted or you're not accepted. And I remember vividly you being put on a waiting list. And I just would love for you to talk through. You come from an orphanage in Latvia with your sisters. You used to take a bus to go to school. It was a 10-minute walk, an hour drive, and you did it on your own, unless your sisters were with you. I know that you faced a certain amount of adversity in your life. When you found out that you were on that waiting list to a school that you really wanted to go to, did you feel like there was no hope, or were you like, hey, bring it on? I've seen just about everything growing up. I can face this challenge. I can overcome this challenge and I can get into this school. Can you walk the listeners through what it meant for you to be put on the waiting list and maybe some of the stuff that you've been through growing up? How did it help you endure that moment?
I think I remember, obviously, is when you find out if you're on a waiting list, you also find out how many of your friends got into those schools and how many did not. And so obviously most of my class went to Regis and they all got in almost. So I think at that moment, there was a little bit of defeat because, I mean, it wasn't easy. So I tried really hard to do what I could do and to explain, and to take the test and do as well as I could. So part of it was just feeling a little bit of just kind of, all of I've tried, but I guess maybe this is not enough. But at the same time, part of me, that there was a sense of hope that I was waiting, being on a wait list. And I also told myself that it's not a no.
Right.
And so I just remember, partially, I just think I just probably couldn't really process it to its fullest extent, how I felt. And so I think I just kind of went into that, like, I'll just wait. I'm not going to think about it. Like, I'll just wait and see. And so I got in. And so I still remember that day when my dad came back with flowers and telling me that I got in. So it was just, I think I didn't fully process it. So I think I just kind of got into that mindset of, I'll just wait. I'm not going to think about it too much, because I think partially, I think I made Regis being my only choice.
Right.
And
Yeah,
so
you
it
kind of
was just,
you siloed a little bit of this was the choice, the only choice, and if it didn't work out, you didn't feel like you had many other opportunities because you didn't have it presented that way or look at it that way. But nonetheless, I mean, what did it mean to you? Your dad's there with a set of flowers. Do you remember that day, and what did it mean for
I
you to know
do.
that you got in?
I do remember it. I was practicing violin, and it was crazy just to kind of, it was just a little bit of, I'm smart enough to do it because I was just not a good student before that. Like eighth grade, I had to push myself to do good. Like there was no, I just wanted to do good. Like I was a D and C student before I came to the US. But coming to US, it was kind of almost, my parents just didn't let me, give up if I wanted, like when I wanted it to. So I think when I found out that I got in, it got me excited about what's ahead and the opportunities that I would get. I never thought I would go past ninth grade. That's kind of no one knew that I knew before. They all stopped ninth grade, that's it. And then you got a job
Back
in the
home.
work.
Okay.
Mhm.
Wow.
Only a few went. If you have money, you do. And so I just never thought I would get to go to high school, let alone be in college. So I think it was just even, I mean, again, I don't think I fully processed it. I think it was just kind of still not really understanding what was happening. But I do remember getting really excited that I get a chance to, and that other people saw that, that I tried and they saw potential in me that I could do it.
And I saw that on the tennis courts. And what's just really cool for me, I come from a pretty extensive playing background, high school coaching background, being able to see that gratefulness that you had each and every time you got onto the tennis court. And it was very humbling because some of the best coaches I had in my life was a lot of European training. I had two
Mm.
coaches from Poland when I lived in Arizona at the Wigwam Resort. Language barrier galore. I was the only American
Oh,
there. They spoke two words of English. It was run and the S word. And they would
oh,
literally, literally just work me 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. At that point, I had a long way to go on my tennis journey, but European training got me to my goal. As I fast forward to becoming a coach and being back to meeting you, I'm like, wait, I get an opportunity to, after talking to your mom, hearing from you're from Latvia, and I'm like, wait, I get an opportunity to teach someone that has a language barrier, that is in a situation that they're not totally understanding or comfortable with at the moment. I'm like, bring it on. Your goal in tennis was, I know you mentioned violin. I think it was part of just your development as a human being. A professional tennis player and anything like that was not the goal. It was just
oh.
developing who you are as a person. As I say that, I'd love for you to talk about what the game of tennis and learning the game of tennis, what that meant to you as part of your development into who you are today.
I think when I started playing, I mean, I had no idea that tennis was a sport before coming to the US alone. So I think when my parents got introduced me to it, just saying, see if you like it. I mean, I don't even really remember what part of tennis made me want to play it. I just loved it. I enjoyed that aspect that it can be an individual sport and it can be a team sport. At the point where I started, obviously I was nowhere near. I mean, I was just beginning, like I barely could hit a ball. It just helped me like kind of see a different side of me a little bit. I was always a little competitive. Like I never really liked, I always kind of like,
A little competitive.
yeah.
You're pretty darn competitive, my friend.
So I enjoyed just going on the court and learning. Like it's just that aspect of like being pushed a little more to do something new. Like I mean, yes, I was in a new place and I was thinking about this and I don't remember why exactly. I just remember it just brought me so much joy when I started playing. And I mean, it was just like I got to go there I got to get on the court and just, I mean, obviously it was not easy because I would get always really frustrated because I just wanted to be good. I wanted to be able to hit a ball across the net and make it. I did not use that time as getting away from things or not thinking about certain things, but it was just something that I've never been maybe able to do.
Right.
And so doing something like that where I got to see how far I could go. I mean, I was 12. I don't think I really understood it, like how much tennis would teach me. The things that I've learned in tennis, I still use to this day. I mean, it doesn't have to be how to hit a forehand. It was discipline. It was working hard for 5 more minutes or, not giving up when it started to rain. Things like that, I think, just helped me develop who I am today.
That's so well said. Because tennis, there's a book out there called The Inner Game of Tennis. And the big slogan from the book is tennis is life and life is tennis. And I kind of chuckle at it sometimes because I'm like, gosh, that's really cheesy. But at the same time, tennis has done the very same thing in my life. I mean, I never thought how I pushed myself in a sport would lead me to discipline and structure that was necessary for me. It allowed me to realize what I'm truly capable of if I put my mind to it. And I think you said a really good point earlier about how when you were back in Latvia and you didn't have some of the structure that you've had in the United States to where it was kind of truly all on you at a very young age to finish your homework or understand a concept, to now you get the education, you get the coaching, you put all of these pieces together and it's developed this resiliency and gratefulness to the opportunity you have now. And I was able to spend a couple of years with you at Regis Jesuit, and then your family relocated to Arizona. I would love for you to talk about those last couple of years of high school and that dreaded COVID year that maybe took away an opportunity for you to tap into some leadership skills.
Yeah, so I moved from Colorado to Arizona after my sophomore year of high school. So I played JV tennis freshman, sophomore. And then when I moved, I still wanted to play in high school because I loved it and I just wanted to play a sport in high school. And it was, so I joined a club just to kind of keep practicing and, having that. And learned a lot from being there and kind of seeing different kind of coaching and different levels of players. So that alone was a big change. And then junior year came and I played tennis again. That was great. I mean, it was definitely a little bit challenging because I went from knowing one team and playing with them for 2 years where I got comfortable with knowing them and, you know, doing certain things like conditioning and things that I knew I could, we could all do together, and then go into a whole different state where I did not know anyone and did not know where I would be on the ladder at all. So I think that was definitely kind of hard to get used to again, just kind of almost going back to my freshman year where I was like, oh my gosh, tryouts again and all of that. So it was just kind of those nerves again. And then senior year came, and of course, season starts in the spring, not the fall. Practices were still in the fall, and then so season just started. I mean, and how it was in Arizona is that seniors got to be senior captains. And so there was a couple of us. And so, it was kind of a great opportunity to just kind of be in that leadership role where you got to, not only play tennis, but also kind of mentor, like, incoming freshmen and just kind of see how the team is doing and be that kind of leader and kind of. And so, but sadly, I mean, it was March. And so, I mean, we just got barely started on our season and it got cut. So, I mean, obviously that was not expected. And I mean, I think when you're a senior, you kind of take that role seriously. I mean, you're the oldest. They're kind of certain people look up to you, even though if you're not on varsity, it's kind of still, you're a senior, you get to kind of help and kind of be there for other players. So I think it was just a little hard. It was that moment where you're like, oh my gosh, I may never touch a racket again. And let alone maybe get to see how everyone else kind of, how they develop. It was definitely hard to wrap your head around because there's so many things that you're like, wow, did not think that was my last practice, or that was my last time, maybe cheering on someone during their match, or so
Right.
it was definitely kind of, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, even for me as a coach, ironically, that year I had left Regis the year before COVID. I was planning on not head coaching anymore. I was asked to be a coach at Highlands Ranch High School because they didn't have a coach for their boys season. And in that fall, I was able to go out and be a coach. And that's where I ended up meeting Mark from Ukraine and Fulhad from Bolivia. And it was right at the end of that boys season, COVID hit. And then the following girls season, it was cut. Right. And I just remember how challenging it was for me as a coach. I couldn't imagine how challenging it was as a player. So when I think of challenges and I think of your story, it would be unique parallel to draw, knowing everything you've gone through. And you had that tough day when your season was cut short with COVID in Arizona. And you've had tough days in Latvia. I would love for you to share with the listeners what's a tough day in Latvia like compared to a tough day in the United States.
Oh, wow. I mean, tough days in Latvia were, I mean, for me, sadly, it's a lot of dealing with maybe seeing your parents. I was the oldest, so obviously I remember a lot more than my little sisters do. So I think a lot of those days consisted of maybe seeing your parents drinking or, not being kind of, and I was the one who had to take care of my sisters because I was the oldest. And I kind of took that role seriously because I did not ever want to leave my sisters being not taken care of. So those tough days were definitely, it was a lot more just what you see. And it was kind of dealing with that and kind of, I mean, how do you deal with that? I don't really know. But in US, it was obviously, I mean, I got to be in a healthy home with loving parents, and so nothing compared to that, but I think it was a lot more mentally challenging. So those tough days were a lot more with just kind of dealing with a lot of anger and a lot of fear and a lot of just thinking like, why do I get to be here? And my parents don't, when I got into Regis and when I got into private school in Arizona, it was, wow, I get to go to private school where I get to think about college and my friends there don't, and just kind of think it was a lot more mentally dealing with those things and not as much just witnessing, certain things.
I know that the parallel is hard to draw with, obviously, you're at a private school in Arizona and your tennis season's cut by COVID to what you experienced in Latvia, but it drew a parallel to you and I that tennis is a small world, first and foremost. What I'm really realizing in life is when people come across you in life, there's a reason for it. And hearing you talk about your parents back in Latvia, I myself was a child of an alcoholic. My mom passed away when I was 20, and I took her to her first rehab when I was 16 years old. She tried to go to 4 rehabs, and unfortunately, the disease got the best of her. And I never knew that that moment of trauma in my life, even being in the United States, would ever lead me to develop an understanding, an empathy, a communication style to where if I have someone that has a language barrier coming from Latvia to try to learn how to play tennis, that there would be a way to have some sort of connection on the court. And going to where you are now, being a college student and many years removed from when you and your sisters first came to the United States, I think it would be really powerful for you to talk about what all of this tough days that you've experienced, it's blossomed into you being a student to about to graduate from college to pursue nursing. Julija, full transparency, is one of my favorite players that I ever coached, besides you at Regis, of course, was a gal by the name of Kate Carroll. She won a state championship my first year at Regis back in 2010. And she became a nurse at St. Joe's Hospital here in Colorado.
That's right.
And was a trauma nurse in the ER. And she went to Santa Clara, which has a great nursing program in California. And just hearing you wanting to follow in those footsteps of nursing, putting this all together in a package from where you've been to where you are now. Why nursing? And maybe talk about the future to what you hope to accomplish in that field.
Yeah, nursing just is, just thinking about why, what drew me to nursing is it's such a unique field where you get to make connections with all kinds of people, patients who physicians may not. And so that's partially why I chose nursing. I've always had that kind of caring spirit in me. I cared for my sisters. I kind of took them under my wing, little kids in the orphanage. Like I love caring for other people. I love listening to people's stories. I think through what I've been and kind of it helps me be more compassionate and more empathetic towards people and I want to help people, but not for selfish reasons. And so I think that's just kind of who I am. And I think nursing, with how flexible it is, able to give me that. And I think partially also using a skill of knowing another language is what I want to incorporate into nursing somehow. Not sure yet. That's what I've been thinking through.
So is that your native language back home?
So Russian.
Still speak fluent Russian?
Yeah. So I've been trying to figure it out how I can use that, because I don't want to go to waste and not use that. I want to do that with kids. I've always just grown up around kids, and I've always just loved taking care of kids. So I think nursing just has a lot different than medicine. And I'm just able to, I find myself making better connections when when I shadow nurses or learning about nursing. And class wise, science classes, I just enjoy a lot more. It's just something that I've been able to also, it's a huge part. But yeah, it's just listening to people, going into a patient's room and not being there, and being there for more than 2 minutes is a huge part for me, especially because I do not see myself as someone who just kind of goes in, oh, what's happening? Okay, here you go, done. It's just not how I see myself helping people. And so I think I'm able to be a better listener in nursing. So I think that's something. So I think there's a lot of aspects that make me excited of thinking that nursing in the future and being a nurse practitioner, and hopefully using my language to help others and see where that is needed. And yeah.
I love it.
So.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're a tremendous listener because you had to put up with me for the years of tennis torment that I put you through. But it leads me to one last question. And I just think it's really all about perspective. And I know you hit on a few of these points, but I think if I provide some framework to this question and then ask the question, I think it would be really cool for you to share with the listeners what life means to you right now. Let's go back to that bus stop in Latvia. You're 9, 10 years old, getting on the bus with your sisters to go to school. And here you are, present day, about to graduate from Creighton. And you had an opportunity to go back to that bus stop in Latvia and sit down with your 9, 10-year-old self. And based off of all of the experience that you've had since being in the United States, all of the experience you've had with the opportunities with the family that has adopted you, knowing what you know now, Julia, what advice would you give yourself back at that bus stop?
Oh gosh, I would say, the biggest thing is that for someone who was scared and did not know what's going to happen next, and constantly thinking about what I could do for my sisters and to give them, the support that they needed. And kind of, I think I would say that you are stronger than you think you are, and that you are loved, even though you might not know that. Yeah, it's a hard question. But I think partially, knowing that I would say that you are strong enough, because when you're in that state, maybe if you're, that just goes for anyone who's kind of going into the new environment or new place and they've never been in. I think there's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of, you just think that you can't do it, or you may not be able to do it because, but I think reminding yourself that you can do it. It may not be easy. Life always throws curveballs at you no matter what. And I think just knowing that you can deal with it, and and I think doing it with a grateful heart. Going back to that, when I was there and like waiting for the bus stop, and so I was still thankful for the fact that I got to go back to my school that I always went to. Just remembering that where you at, you're supposed to be where you're supposed to be. Just looking at it, you can do it, and it may not be easy, but those things that you look back now, you say, wow, so much that you probably did not see then that you do now.
I often say on the BTB project that impossible is nothing. How does a C and D student end up about to graduate from Creighton with a nursing degree? That seems pretty impossible in my opinion.
I think there was a little bit of, I underestimated maybe what I could do. And I think that's partially why I think obviously I would not be able to do it without my parents or people in my life. And I think a lot of us just underestimate the things that you could do. When I did get D's and C's on my grades, I thought that's kind of what kind of student I was. I wasn't, it was like, okay, well, and I think when I got to a new place with a new perspective and kind of maybe people telling you, no, there's more to that than just, and then you can do better. You kind of almost draw yourself back because of certain things. And so that's a huge, when you think of impossible, is, you kind of just, I think it's a lot of your own limitations that you put on yourself. I did that, and so I think a lot of people do due to different experiences and things. But I think realizing that and slowly learning from that.
I always get taken back when people tell me that I've taught them something or they've learned so much from me. But in this conversation and in our interactions together, I've learned so much. I'm just excited for the future ahead. I'm proud of you and your sister's perseverance and the opportunity to share your story. And Miss Julija Eddy, I cannot thank you enough for spending some time with me today on the BTB project.
Thank you. When you asked me, it's so lucky to be part of it. So much to learn from every podcast. And I'm grateful for having an opportunity to be part of it.
We'll continue to push forward. We're all rooting for you. And thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
What a remarkable journey we just went on with Julija Eddy's story. And what resonated with me throughout the conversation was her positive perspective. I mean, she talked about many times in her life growing up in Latvia to where she was fearful, whether it was fearful at that bus stop, walking to and from her orphanage, and just a lot of different situations that none of us would ever have to experience at such a young age as she did. But her determination to do what's best for her family, to be a representation of her sisters and the opportunity she had to come to the United States is a story of triumph and something that I'll certainly take away and use in my own life. For the listeners, Julia's story is just one of those many stories that allow us to understand that truly impossible is nothing. And finding the silver lining in most situations in our life allows us to go after our goals, dreams, and ambitions in more ways than we could ever imagine. I mean, she went from a C and D student back in her native country to coming to the United States, graduating from a private school, being able to get into Creighton University. And now she's almost graduating with ambitions to pursue nursing. That is what truly the BTB project is all about. I'm proud of each and every one of you. If Julia's story was something that inspired you, do me a favor, like and subscribe to the BTB project. Better yet, send the episode to a family member, friend, or colleague and let them know why it impacted you. We are on mission to continue to share stories, change lives, and be on mission together. Thank you for checking out today's episode. And until next time, take care.
You're told I'll be a hard temptation.